Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our very first podcast for My Spectrum Life. My name is Jessica,
And I'm Kelsey. Good evening.
and we're so happy you're here with us tonight. Um, this is something very new for us, and we hope that you enjoy getting to know us and our stories. I myself am an autism mom. Can't see it. Well, here, my mama bear shirt, or not shirt, my mug to start with. Um, and Kelsey is currently a teacher, and she was our ABA therapist for a while.
For a long time.
Yeah, actually.
For a very long time. Fell in love with your family, fit right on in, and helped your son make some tremendous gains.
Yes,
So
he's
thank you for
actually.
having me. Appreciate it.
Yep, and she's going to be with us. She's going on this journey with me the whole time. She's my co-host, my cohort in crime, as I say. But anyway, so I thought our tonight would probably be a good time to give our origin story. I mean, yes, I can say that my family is big into Star Wars and Marvel and superheroes. So my first thought was, okay, why in the world would we be qualified to do this? And so that would be our origin story. Now, you were telling me yesterday or the day before the newest statistic on autism.
Yes. So one of the newest research came in. 1 in 58 kids have autism, and it's still prevalent in boys.
Wow.
So either the criteria of finding kids with autism is narrowing, or there is something else causing it, which will be a later topic later on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and one of the things that, we'll be watching the research and stuff, but one of the basic things and most important things that we see is, does it really matter what caused it? We've got to live.
You
We've
got to
got to
live,
keep
right?
going. We got to,
Right.
we can't just, try to survive every day. We need to thrive. And how can we do that?
Right.
How can we help our kids survive? There we go. That's a new word.
Survive. Provide.
So my first contact with autism came when I was in high school. I was babysitting a little boy who's about 3 years old. And I remember being told that he was non-communicative and that he was autistic and he would just grunt at me all day. And so I spent the day with him, and he was still in diapers, which, that doesn't matter at all. But one of the most interesting things I saw was he went up, we were watching TV, and he went up to the TV, and it was on the floor. So, of course, it was his height. And he took his finger and he went like this at one of those points where there was an address from right to left, exactly as you would with the letters and stuff like he was reading. And I thought that was just the most interesting thing ever. And, so it just I was awed by that. And, was really struggling, but doing my best to try to understand him that day. And that was my very first contact with autism. What about you, Kelsey?
I was in college looking for a job. One of my friends said, "Hey, we need you to be a personal care assistant for 2 twin boys." And I said, "All right." So I walked in, and over the months, they had ABA come in, and I kind of looked at the mom and I said, "What's ABA?" And so she goes, "It's therapy for my kids. My kids have autism." Fell in love right in there, and I just kind of moved forward with it. These kids were high functioning that you would have never even known unless the mother told me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's kind of common with high functioning. It's one of those what they might call a silent disability.
Mm-hmm.
So now my son is autistic. He was born healthy, and he was high functioning, so it was very difficult to get that diagnosis. He was actually not even diagnosed until he was 7 years old. And so that, in and of itself, I skipped all of that, wasn't able to get the
Early
prior,
intervention.
the early intervention. I do remember when he was younger, some of those, now that I look back, you can see some of those telltale signs, like one of his very first toys that he had in his hand constantly was this little Thomas the Train. that had one of those buttons that you push on top and it said something all the time. And so he kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Usually you can get your toddler to stop pushing the button. Not the case. But he fell in love with Thomas the Train. We had to have Thomas the Train everything. Then we moved on to dinosaurs, which is very common, right?
Yep.
Currently, and I think he's stuck with our favorite little guy, Stitch.
I love Stitch.
He loves Stitch. So, but that was one of those interesting things. And I remember one day while he was playing with his Thomas the Train over there in the corner, I thought he was deaf. And so I purposely, he's paying attention to his toy and I'm across the way and I purposely said Curtis and I wasn't very loud. And then I progressively got louder and about the 4th or 5th time he actually looked at me. And so it was like, okay, well, he's not deaf, so I don't know what's going on. And then of course, when he learned to walk, he started to elope. Can you explain what elopement is?
Elopement is the escape out of a room.
Okay, yeah, that's that fancy word.
Elope. You're escaping. Yep.
And sometimes it does help to have those fancy words. But when he was about 4 years old, in Sunday school, a friend of ours said, he keeps covering his ears and stuff at church with odd noises. You should get that checked out. And so we did. And the doctor said, he has got amazing hearing. There's no problems. I'm like, okay, so what is this?
Right.
And you keep going through things like in kindergarten.
Right.
Oh, it was the first year in kindergarten when you don't know what's going on. It was such a struggle.
It is a struggle.
We couldn't sit in a chair. We couldn't be in a group and interact very well with others. We worked with a school counselor, but we just could not get an idea of how to help him.
Right.
And I think one of my first, I've been kind of at times disillusioned with the educational system, but it's because that sometimes it's difficult to get what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first, I think, real big issue was when I was told in kindergarten, even though he knows his ABCs and he knows all of his work perfectly, you need to hold him back because he's immature. Yeah, exactly. So I was very upset. So we pulled him out of we pulled him out of what's called a brick and mortar school and went to a virtual online school. And was able to, that gave us the freedom to go and get the appointments because when you get on the journey with autism and the therapy that you have to go to, you find that those after school appointments are
slim to none.
Yes, exactly. So we were able to get into some of those earlier appointments, and our first diagnosis was ADHD combined type.
Okay.
And sensory processing disorder.
Oh, the one that is even more uncommon.
Yes, and that one was like, well, I've heard of ADHD because my I have a stepson, and I have 2 stepsons actually, but one of my stepsons has ADHD, takes medication and stuff. And so I was like, okay, I think I know how to handle this. Maybe. I did make sure that when my pediatrician recommended a book called Taking Charge of ADHD, I did pick it up from Amazon and started reading that so I'd know what's going on.
Hey, Jess, what is ADHD?
Let's see. Attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
So what does that mean? Does it mean that he can't pay attention, or is it just means he just has a lot of energy to cause
For him, it's both.
Okay.
It's hard to hold his attention for any span. I mean, I was lucky to get that first year in first grade, I was lucky to get 7 to 10 minutes out of him paying attention to a lesson.
Wow.
Considering last year we were getting what? Almost 30 minutes or so of him sitting still.
Right.
That's a progression.
That is a progression. And it's a slow progression because he's 11 now, and during that time, it was, well, you said he was soon be in about 6 or 7, so that's almost 4 years to go from 10 minutes to 30 minutes, and that's between what he had: OT, PT, ABA. What else did he have?
We had PCIT. Okay, so I guess we probably better explain all the
Yeah, acronyms. My bad.
So you can have acronym soup wherever you go in life.
I know, right?
So PCIT is parent-child interaction
Okay.
therapy.
Okay.
So we began, that was one of the first things we began at the Medical University of South Carolina when we were first diagnosed, because they knew that the wait list for ABA, or that's your
Applied behavior analysis.
yes. Well, they knew that those wait lists can be so incredibly long. And so we started with the PCIT,
Okay.
which actually the protocol that we were following there in the therapy sessions is actually some of what was recommended in the ADHD book that my pediatrician had recommended.
Wow. Wow.
So
What
that
is the
worked
name
so
of the
well.
book that she recommended?
Taking Charge of ADHD.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it.
This has been a good help. Then the other thing that we were able to get to almost immediately was occupational therapy.
Okay.
And that was for the sensory processing disorder.
That's for gross motor skills, is not for fine motor skills. OT's
Fine motor
for fine.
skills and for any of his sensory issues. And so, I mean, when I went in there for OT, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Thankfully, our first therapist said to understand that, get this book, which is The Out of Sync Child.
That's a good book.
Yes, it is. I read this and I was like, oh, I get it.
It really takes you in the mind frame of somebody who
Mhm.
has that sensory processing disorder. So you're actually looking through their lens.
Right.
Because sensory processing disorder is so mimicked by other behaviors of another diagnosis that you oftentimes miss it. And a lot of times, some of their anger or some of the things that you're seeing is because they're not getting that input for their own body, and they don't have a way to communicate with you.
Right. And one of the things that I found almost immediately is my son does not fall in the sensory seeking.
Right.
Or there's like 2 different categories. He does not fall in one of them. It depends on his day.
Yep. It
It goes
swings.
minute by minute. Sometimes, sometimes you can come around him and give him a big bear hug. That'll calm him down. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, "Don't touch me."
I'm done. Thanks.
So, it can be difficult to handle.
It is.
But those two books were the first 2 that I tackled that really helped me. Um, but but yeah, it was a while before we got oh, yeah, oh, sorry. It says down there that my husband's on the other side of telling me what to say. The links for those books, if you are interested, will be in the show notes following at myspectrumlife.com with this episode, so you can look at there if you want a greater understanding of that. But that's some of the topics that we will be tackling at a later date.
Yep.
But yeah, one of the things that
go ahead.
One of the things that was after getting that going through and starting the OT, which we actually started OT before we got the autism diagnosis.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because that was getting into occupational therapy at a place that had a sensory gym was a lot easier than getting approved for ABA therapy.
Wow.
Which seems shocking considering there was, gosh, in South Carolina where we were, there was only like maybe 1 or 2 places with sensory gyms.
It's a very slow moving. Yep.
So, but then when we got the autism diagnosis, it was, it can be very frustrating.
How'd you feel?
Well, it wasn't really a shock.
Okay.
I knew going in that I'd seen and read enough, done a little bit of that bad research on your own where you go onto Google and you try to diagnose yourself. Yeah, done enough of that, and just kinda seen some of the different things, and I was like,
Right.
it wasn't too much of a shock, but it was also kind of a I don't know, it kinda blows your way at the same time
Mhm.
because you start to realize, things are not gonna be the same.
Right. But you're also
My
able to get the help that he needed at the same time, though.
Mhm. With with that 14-page diagnostic paperwork, which, that's one of the things you have to have.
Right.
You need to have that. You could start to get the services that you need. But one of the things I do want to encourage people to understand is once you get that diagnosis, it can be a roller coaster of emotions.
It really
On one
is.
hand, you have answers,
On the other hand, your kid's labeled.
yeah, and it doesn't matter how hard you try to get away from that label,
It
it's
always
going
will
to be there.
follow. Mhm. And
Because
society doesn't know how to take it.
mm-mm,
Society's like, "Oh, you have autism. Oh, I'm gonna have to stay away as if I'm gonna catch it." I'm like, nope.
yeah, no, it's not
No,
cool.
no,
Sorry, folks. Um,
nope."
but I decided to embrace the positive because I was going down a different path, which would lead to a different, unique adventure.
Right.
And I didn't want to, oh, woe is me. There's autism. We can't do this and that. And granted, sometimes, some days, yeah, it's like that.
Mhm.
To be honest, there are days when there's lots of meltdowns and stuff. And
What is a meltdown, by the way?
okay, so a meltdown, there's two different things. A temper tantrum is when you can still reason with the child
Yep.
and they just are doing their thing. A meltdown is when it starts. It may usually, with my child, it starts as a temper tantrum, but then he just falls off the edge and there's absolutely
No
no
way.
reasoning.
Yep.
He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just throwing out words, kicking and screaming, doing all these things. And at that point, you just kind of have to make sure he's safe
Mhm.
and back down. So it's two different things there.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, there's days when you have multiple meltdowns and stuff, and you're like, okay, go to bed because I need to go to bed too.
It's
And you're like, please, just I need another day. It
right.
is hard, but you also can't if you don't. I guess I want to say, encourage people, autism moms, autism parents, and guardians out there. You can't wallow in the
What
negativity.
is? Mhm.
You got to just keep going because the one thing is, you're the only person that's going to advocate for your child,
Mhm.
and there are so many ways to do that. Which we'll be looking into. Different things. We'll try to be giving people information about how to advocate for your child, how to help
Yeah.
your child, how to help those around your child
Yep.
to understand.
Without manipulating the environment.
Yes, 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 that's true. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's good days and there's bad days. All of us have them.
And just go with
So,
it. Be
yep,
flexible as possible.
yes, that
It
is one of the
is.
biggest things is flexibility, and even trying to teach a person with autism how to be flexible is tough.
Mhm.
As you have learned so much about.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
conditioned versus unconditioned. There's a difference between being flexible and having a routine. You can still have a
Mhm.
routine and still be flexible.
Right.
Um, and we'll go more into detail with that. But you don't want your child to be conditioned to a certain set of skills or a set of environment, and then when something does go wrong, he has no way to handle it.
Mhm.
And so that's what ABA does, and that's what I do as a registered behavior technician and a special education teacher.
Right.
I go out and I'm like, look, this is what you're struggling with. I'm going to put you in that environment, and I'm going to help you cope with it? What are the self-regulation skills that you have to be able to overcome some of these, so when it happens again, you can still go on with your routine without melting down.
Yes. In the middle of Target or Walmart or what have you. I mean, even this morning, just this morning. So as you can see, my background behind me is my kitchen, and this little microphone here is attached to my kitchen table, and I'm sitting in my son's chair. So when he came down to have breakfast this morning, it was in his way. So he tried to calmly just take it off and put it down and be really careful with everything. And then he was gonna try to put it back up, but it wasn't quite working. So I came in and I'm like, "No, no, no, don't touch that." It's okay. I'll just take it upstairs. No big deal. You know, I had to recognize as a parent, okay, that probably wasn't the best thing to leave that there. So I can't get too mad at him for taking it off.
It's constantly, your guys are constantly adjusting, and you're constantly finding the common balance between everything. So he's not only thinking, okay, well, can I be flexible at this? But you're also thinking, I have to be flexible with this as well. You're choosing your battles without, but you're still keeping the rules into play and still keeping the same routine in play without making a big deal out of everything.
Right. Because it can go into something like that. So
it can. I mean, with any family. I mean, I've seen it even in my teaching. There's sometimes I'm just like, can you please move? Because I know that one of my students are going to talk to another student. I'm like, okay, I really do need you to be quiet during a test. All right, let me go ahead and move it. And I'll ask them to move. And they're like, well, I wasn't talking. And I'm just like, I'm protecting you. Can you please move? So I'm like, let me protect you and move, so you're not failing a test because you want to talk, because you have a hard time not talking. Because part of some of these kids with autism, sometimes talking is them to relieve some of their own anxiety. And so I see that sometimes. And when I'm teaching, like during notes and class discussion, I'm fine with it. But when you have to take a test, I'm going to separate you.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, that's talking in class. That's one of those crazy things. It can technically be called scripting, especially if you're repeating movie lines. Chris has an uncanny knack for scripting the absolute worst lines together. Oh man, we're laughing because gosh, okay, you worked with us for what, 2.5, almost 3 years?
Almost 3 years.
Yeah. So in that time, we'd watch a movie and then all of a sudden I'd get a message home from a teacher. He said this in class.
Oh, it's from Star Wars. My bad. It's from Lego Movie. My bad.
Yeah.
Or was the best one, the one that was Jurassic Park?
Oh yeah, I think so, probably. It's just,
With
I
the
mean,
roars. Yep.
yes, or act like, oh yes. Oh, and we had to go over, that's one of the things he had to go over, saying inappropriate things in public. Things that have two meanings.
Right.
So being a boy and having a can of mixed nuts in the cupboard. And oh yes, you remember this, don't you? So we're trying to find it. He was trying to find the can of mixed nuts and he couldn't find them. And so he goes outside and yells as loud as he can in the neighborhood, "I can't find my nuts." I'm like,
oh, you can't say that, buddy.
Then he comes running back in the house. I'm like, "Curtis, you can't say that like that out in public because that's referring to something different." Okay, he didn't really understand. He ran and I showed him where they were in the cupboard. Comes back outside, "Daddy, I found my nuts." I was like, "Hon,
Oh, okay. We got to teach you.
you gotta have a conversation with
we got to have a
him."
conversation with that. And I mean, even then, we have it still in the classroom today. Even my middle school, high schoolers still have it. Those dual meetings, and you just kind of look and I'm like, you can't say that. Why? Well, let's have this conversation and what you're two different. You got to talk about context. And a lot of times, kids with autism, they don't pick up the full context of things. They're very literal. This is what I mean. This is what it is. I'm sorry that you don't get the rest of it.
Yes, yes, idioms. They're such
Idioms.
wonderful things in
Oh,
the
driving up a
land.
wall. Really? You're really driving up a wall? No.
Yeah, no.
That's
Nope, no. Um, but yeah, no, it's, there's so many things that we've come across on this journey of autism and ABA, and, we'd find these little tiny things almost daily that we
right.
needed to work on.
Right.
So, and we'd work them back into our ABA protocol and keep working on them, and, um, even though now we're, what, couple states away from each other, we still
Mhm,
know what's going on.
mhm.
Um, and that's one thing that, sometimes some people will say, "Oh, EBA is so horrible. You shouldn't do EBA because you're forcing your child to blah, blah, blah." Well, there's good ABA and there's bad ABA.
Mm,
And again, you have to advocate for your child and find the
yep.
right balance.
Right.
Um, and that's one of the things that I was so thankful for the company that you were working for, and the BCBA that I was working with, and with you, how we were able to work in, okay, these are the things that we're actually finding, and how we could work together to find the right program that would make the best difference for Curtis. And we'll have some tips and tricks on that, on how to
I have a
do it.
question.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
talked about a whole bunch of different therapies.
Mhm.
How do you suggest somebody who parents are working double jobs, or a single parent family and they are working a 40-hour job? How do you what would you give them to be able to schedule all these therapies? Because we talked about PT, OT, ABA, and ABA in itself is 25 hours a week, let
Right.
alone OT, what, 2 to 3 hours, and PT 2 to 3 hours. So
Mhm.
what kind of tips would you give to some of these parents who work, or a single
Well,
household family?
one of the things that you can do is, there are a lot of these therapies that your school system are actually required to offer you if your child meets the protocol. And so you can ask for those, and it is your right to ask for any testing that you need to have done. Um, I myself would just moved here to Tennessee, and our IEP came up, and we decided to have, full gamut of testing done so we could see what exact therapies we needed to have done. And we're going through some of those this weekend and next week, to have him go through, and it's all done through the school system. Now, there are some of them that you won't qualify for by the school, category. Like,
Mhm.
for instance, for the longest time, at least in the state of South Carolina, my son does not qualify for OT in the school system in those definitions.
Right.
However, he does still need OT. And so, I myself, because I homeschool my kids through the online, virtual online public school, I make sure that I take those appointments that are during the day to free up some of those afternoon appointments for
Mhm.
people who need those,
Right.
and sometimes there are some places that will have some later hours that will
Okay.
let you get in there. So it's just about, and just do what you can do.
Right.
Don't beat yourself up if you can't get every single therapy in, and every single extracurricular activity. Um,
Right.
it's hard. It really is hard to make all those appointments.
It is.
And I mean, even for me and my poor little girl, it drives us nuts because, I mean, thank goodness she's a good reader. She spends a lot of time in waiting rooms waiting on her brother.
Right.
And that's another thing that we're gonna talk about,
Right.
is helping siblings,
Mhm.
because
Their point of view and how they help each other and how
Mhm.
much patience they have to have.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
and the one thing that scares me to death is, knowing that in the future, you know, eventually my kids are gonna be left without me,
Mhm.
so how, my one of my things is, I want to make sure that my son is able to cope well enough to function,
To be
on
independent.
his own, to be independent.
Mhm.
but he also needs to be able to reach out to his siblings, and I hope and pray that his siblings will be kind enough to be there for him.
I'm sure they will be.
Yeah. Well, his sister will be. I know that for sure.
Oh, for sure.
And I might be able to twist his older brother's arms too. But anyway, let's see. I think that kind of.
So, what is the point of my spectrum life? Why are we starting this?
Well, what I wanted to do was, I've always wanted to bring out, and the biggest thing is to bring awareness to the community.
Awareness is right. Yep.
Because so many people are not aware of what it is.
Right.
Because now there's a saying with autism: when you've seen one person with autism, you've seen one person
with autism. That's right. They're all different.
Exactly.
Every single one of them.
It is a spectrum. There's a reason why it's called a spectrum disorder, because there are so many differences. And so I wanted to make sure that people would know that, nonverbal is not the only type of autism. Right. Most people tend to be more familiar with autism being labeled as a nonverbal child.
But it's not.
Or adult. It's not.
It's not.
It really isn't. So we have a question. How does a parent go about requesting testing with the school, especially one who appears to be neurotypical?
You want to go ahead?
For Kelsey, you're the educator.
So there's a system. So what you're ultimately going to do is you're going to reach out to the teacher. Hopefully teachers already reached out to you saying, hey, these are some of the behaviors or some of the repetition that we're seeing within the classroom. Because sometimes they're not behaviors, they're just repetitive. And he's not succeeding, or he or she is not succeeding. So what you're going to do is they are supposed to reach out to you. If not, you can reach out to the teacher and request a psychologist to come out and do a FBA, which is a functional behavior assessment, where they come out and observe. And from there, they can get the appropriate labels that they need, and you can move forward to potentially get an IEP or a 504 plan to help them out. So it's you advocating and asking the teacher and asking the right to have an FBA done.
Right. And that functional behavior analysis was very important for us.
Very good question. That was a real good question.
Yeah, that was a great question. And that, don't be afraid of those in that instance. When it comes to the medical community and getting the testing done that you need to have done, don't be afraid of labels there. Use labels for your advantage in that setting. Yep. You want to use it there, because the more you use the jargon of the educational system or the medical community, it's amazing how doors open up and people are like, they know what they're talking about.
We can't josh them around.
No, I mean, and that's another time I think that something we need to, another topic I was going to talk to you about is me and my binders. Oh, my husband is shaking his head across there. He's helping us produce this, and Kelsey is laughing. But my organized binders, they helped me so much. And being able to tick and highlight and stuff and do that research within those reports, bringing that jargon will help you. So we'll see about going over how you can organize your information so that you
just have a jargon podcast.
Yes. We need to have our little flashcards instead of the ABCs. We're going to learn the
jargon of ABA and jargon of the medical educational field.
Yes, exactly. And you'll be surprised what kind of doors it opens up for you.
It opens a lot of doors. It
really does. So, that's, and that's exactly what we want to do, is to be able to answer your questions, help you get the testing and things that you need, suggest the places. We're going to try and get some guests on to
the ABCs of autism. That's right.
There we go.
ABCs of autism.
That's what it'll be. Love that.
Love it.
But getting that information out there, getting some interesting information about, maybe some different sensory tools.
Mm-hmm.
Some sensory items that have worked for my kid, but may or may not work for your kid.
Yep.
Because they're all different. So, but that's what we're going to be here for, and that's what we're wanting to do.
Awesome. So when is our next one?
So I think we scheduled our next one for right now because we wanted to make sure and see what the response would be, and see how people respond, and if they, if they'd like it, if they want to, continue on. We're going to go every other week, so it'll be February 24th, if I'm not mistaken. February 24th.
February 24th.
Okay. Yeah, I was going right off the top of my head. I didn't scroll down on I have my Google Docs right here. But that'll be our next one. Let's see some of the other topics that we thought about. Well, I thought about. One thing that has helped us is a service dog. We have a little service dog.
Yep.
Little Chewy, he's awesome, and we can tell you about him. I think we pretty much talked about some of, and anytime you have an idea that you would like to discuss or something you want to know about, please submit it to us via email at info@myspectrumlife.com. We'll be glad to check those out. You can go to our webpage, which is myspectrumlife.com. There are links there. There'll be the show notes there, and that'll contain the links of the items, the books that we talked about tonight. And anytime that we talk about anything that could be a help to you, we'll go ahead and throw those links up there.
And we also have a Facebook page and an Instagram and Twitter.
Yes.
So you can find us on Facebook page and Twitter and Instagram and follow us through that. Derek does a wonderful job in spreading the word on social media, so you're always up to date. So we thank you. And just like us, hit the star on Facebook and say you like us, and it'll always pop up on your news feed.
And please like and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. By doing that, we know that you want us to continue with this, and we are just more than happy, and we just want to bring awareness to the community, and create not only a community of everybody else who sees us in trying to deal with our children in the middle of the grocery store or something like that, dealing with that kind of issue, but also we want to have a we want to create community amongst us as those who are part of the autism, ADHD, special needs community, because we want to encourage each other, because the journey is not easy.
No. And it's a journey. It's a journey.
It is.
Oh, thank you, Chad. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, I think that's about it for tonight.
It is. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking with you. I enjoyed showing the information. And guys, thank you so much for coming out and interacting with us. And I look forward to know more about Curtis and your journey, and learn more about you as we go through this. With that being said, a lot of faith, fidget toys, and
with a lot of faith, love, and fidget toys.
I had it backwards. My bad.
We will make it.
Blooper.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.